happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup. And the president may not be celebrating Pride this year, but his employees are.
Yes, and a happy Christopher Street Liberation Day to you all. The Justice Department LGBT employees are going to have scheduled a Pride confrontation with Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Wait till you hear this one. Meanwhile, in other headlines, Russia's gay propaganda laws have been ruled illegal by the European Court.
I had no idea Russia was even subject to that.
Well, they're not. More about that.
6 members of the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS have resigned over the Trump administration's hostility to people with AIDS.
And the Trump administration's new guidance for transgender students is vague and heartless.
The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, which was created by Congress, I believe, is investigating the Trump administration for the cuts in enforcement that they are perpetrating.
I smell a theme this week. Meanwhile, anti-LGBT activist representative Steve Scalise had his life saved by an out lesbian on his security detail.
The Stonewall Rebellion's history has just gotten a $1 million boost from Google.
The state of Oregon and the District of Columbia are set to offer a gender-neutral marker on driver's licenses and other government papers, and California may follow right along after them.
And following the lead of other states, an out gay person was nominated by Governor Cuomo to the New York State's highest court.
Rainbow and transgender-themed crosswalks are proliferating worldwide.
Serbia may get an out lesbian prime minister.
And we're going to end the show with our coverage of the memorial rally and march in honor of Gilbert Baker, creator of the rainbow flag, last week. We'll show you extensive clips from that.
By our associate producer, Bill Ballman.
Yes, who did a great job of putting that together.
All right, so
but we start in Washington, D.C. Bulletin. It may not be by the time you see this, but we got this just before we started taping. Every government department has a group of LGBT employees and allies. And we've been telling you about how several State Department, Defense Department, others have been holding their regular little annual Pride celebrations this year. But the employees of the Justice Department are one-upping everyone. They have a Pride celebration scheduled for June 28th, next week. And their guest of honor, the person they're giving an award to, is Gavin Grim.
Well, Gavin Grim was someone that they were defending up until recently.
And then they switched 180 degrees. Gavin Grim is the, I guess, just graduated or just about to graduate high school student from Virginia who's a trans man and who sued for the right to use the bathroom appropriate to his gender expression.
Which he had been until it was cracked down upon.
Yes, and so he was taking his case to the Supreme Court. That got interfered with for various technical reasons. The Obama administration was supporting him. The Trump administration reversed course and said, nope, we're against this now. Plus, we're taking away those rights from every other trans student in the country. So the Justice Department, LGBT, and allied employees are honoring Gavin Grim in the Great Hall of the Justice Department next week.
Well, that would be the time then to talk about the new trans non-guidance coming from the Education Department, which the ACLU called a shameful move. It's basically so vague that nobody knows what to do. They just keep sort of repeating, we're just following the law, whatever the law is. We don't know what the law is, but we're following the law.
Well, what they said is you can, Civil Rights Division of the Education Department, you can...
Such as it is.
You can, yeah, where no one works there anymore, but I exaggerate. But you can investigate cases of harassment or bullying of all, sorts of people, including trans kids. Not so much on the bathroom access. That's really optional. You may not want to do that. And we're withdrawing these cases the cases that exist. So not so much on those cases.
Well, it's horrendous.
Well, as a result of this and other things, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, which is an independent organization, is going to investigate the Trump administration on its enforcement of civil rights laws and
They
guidelines.
have grave concerns about what's going on in this country.
So do we.
Like most of us.
Yes, exactly. Ugh. And we learned this week that Secretary of State Tillerson, who at least, made some gestures in the direction of pride, has not yet raised any concerns with the Russians about gay men being tortured and killed in Chechnya. He says it's on his pending list.
Well, meanwhile, the Army National Guard is undergoing training around transgender issues, so things are moving forward on that front.
Well, and the first out lesbian Army general, Tammy Smith, a major general, was at the Army's Pride celebration in Seoul, South Korea, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
And the Commerce Department was analyzing its employees' rules on non-discrimination and rewrote them and reissued them. And strangely enough, when they reissued the guidelines on non-discrimination for their employees, sexual orientation and gender identity had dropped off the list.
Where'd they go?
Where'd they go? But this did not go unnoticed.
It was a mistake, like not identifying the spouse of the head of Luxembourg, who was a male.
That was Wilbur Ross who did that, the Secretary of Commerce. But they're back.
Well, on a I guess a better note, this anti-LGBTQ David Clark, the Milwaukee County Sheriff, has withdrawn from the consideration for the position of Assistant Secretary for the Office of Partnership and Engagement.
Yeah, well, you know what he's going to do now?
Homeland Security. I don't, but that's why I watch the show, because I learn things.
He's going to run against Tammy Baldwin for the U.S. Senate.
Good luck with that.
Well, I hope good luck with that. You never can tell these days.
I know this guy, Donald Trump, we thought was pretty much a joke. He was elected president of the United States.
And still seems to have a lot of support, as I have warned you. Watch out. But I was happy to see his newest lawyer, Jay Sekulow, who we talked about last week a little, get humiliated on the Sunday shows this week, even if it has no impact on Trump or anyone else.
And as I say, I think with hiring somebody like Sekulow, who is a complete right-wing nut, they're just playing to their base and solidifying it.
Well, they're certainly appeasing their Christian evangelical supporters by hiring him.
What
he's
good is
their
having
lawyer.
Jay Sekulow in there if you're having a pride celebration at the Department of State?
Because
With
pride
Gavin
celebrations are... No, that's at the Justice Department.
what did I say?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Well, meanwhile, the question is, Steve Scalise.
Yes, he was the Republican lawmaker who was shot by a guy who was looking to kill Republican legislators. And it turns out
Scalise on the right there.
Yes, yes. So the
on the left
is Crystal Griner. She's a law enforcement officer on his detail, and she was one of two Capitol Police officers who took on the deranged gunman and stopped him.
and took a bullet for her trouble.
And, Scalise is a guy who authored a constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage, voted no on reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, wanted to amend the Constitution to define marriage as man and a woman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder if this will be an awakening for him.
Well, Crystal Grinder is a lesbian who has a wife and a child, I believe.
Yes, her wife's name is Tiffany.
Yep. So we haven't heard anything about Scalise saying anything about this. We hear so many deathbed conversions that I certainly would like him to be asked directly about this. Meanwhile, the president and his wife visited the hospital and took a bouquet of flowers to Crystal and her wife. What can you say?
Well, you can do what Nikos Giannopoulos did.
This was the picture of the year, and I'm sure you've seen this. It's been everywhere.
Nikos was the teacher of the year. He's from Rhode Island, and he decided to gay it up when he went into the White House with that fan. He's the one on the left.
Melania is the one on the right.
That's actually Melania Trump, who has just moved into the White House. He said
looking butcher than Nikos.
He said the entire day I was thinking about what it means to be in the White House and in the Oval Office, what it represents to be an openly gay person and a queer LGBT person in the White House, and he put it on display.
Well, he says he walked into the, put that picture up again if you can. He walked into the Oval Office and he said to Trump, do you mind if I take out my fan? And Trump said, oh, I love it. Go for it. And he whips out the fan and the pose, which is quite gay. He also has a rainbow pin on, and this is
not a joke. If he was black, the Secret Service would have shot him when he took it out.
Possibly.
And after what we saw this week,
yes.
Just horrendous.
Yes, but this, thank you, Nikos. All the teachers of the year were at the White House from every state. Nikos did, however, complain that he didn't get a chance to actually have a conversation with the president. And
what good would that do?
And he kept referring to him as the guy in the chair. He wasn't calling him by name.
Going back to the Scalise story for 1 second, Caitlyn Jenner spoke out about it this week, and she said, fortunately, the guy who tried to shoot him was a really bad shot. Liberals can't even shoot straight. I think we're done with you.
Bad.
Caitlyn.
Yeah, no, Caitlyn's a big gun fan. All right, have we done enough on the Trump administration?
I think so.
Yeah, I think if we think of anything else, we'll come back.
Well, except for the fact that Lambda Legal is not only opening up a Washington office, but and they're a nationwide group already, but they're launching a $100 million campaign for this because there's so much stuff to deal with in Washington to fight the Trump administration.
We will get back to the Trump administration and HIV and AIDS news.
Yes.
But let's move on to Pride things. We went to the Gilbert Baker Memorial last week, and we're going to show you a few still pictures from that.
It was a combination of old activists, and there were a whole bunch of young people who had interviewed Gilbert who were there. They were standing towards the front.
Well, the guy on the left is Alex from Outcasting, PBS radio show, and he was one of the last to interview Gilbert, and he spoke at the event.
At the Stonewall.
More pictures, please.
At the Stonewall. And then we marched down the street with Gilbert's banners. This one said, Republican hate kills.
Yeah, and we
then
have
another one that said, stop Trump's...
Don't buy Trump's lies.
Don't buy Trump's lies.
That was actually a remake of Don't Buy Putin's Lies. He just cut Putin out of it and put Trump in. Keep going.
What's the difference?
Gays Against Guns. Gilbert made these banners for all sorts of groups, and there will be tons of them in the Pride Parade this weekend.
And then there was this, when we marched down Christopher Street to the river, there was this huge rainbow flag, which had been the backdrop for the ceremony, and that was carried down. And finally, we get to the pier, and our old friend Dana shot this wonderful picture with the World Trade Center in the background on the Christopher Street pier. The Rise and Resist people raised this flag on a telescoping pole.
Flagpole.
And we want this there permanently.
Yes.
And we're going to be fighting for that.
Yes, we've Gilbert wanted the city to erect a flagpole with the flag. There's one in San Francisco.
Yes.
The city here has been dragging its feet, but we're going to continue to fight for that.
The governor in New York is going to announce a Pulse Memorial, which Gilbert's submitted this design to them. We don't know who's going to win. That'll probably be announced this week. But if it's not Gilbert, we're going to get that flag down there.
So you know that this is the main Pride weekend in New York. On Friday night, there's the drag march. On Saturday, the Dyke March, which starts at 5 p.m. at Bryant Park, and on Sunday, the main Pride March. A couple things about that. First of all, for the first time in history, and for the 48th Pride March, it will be televised.
By WABC TV. It'll be on network television, so there'll be commercials.
That's not a network TV station.
Well, it's a network affiliate.
Yes, it's a local station. It's not going across the network.
I meant an affiliate.
It's noon on Sunday if you're in the New York area.
12 to 3.
You can get it. And I will be in the resist contingent at the near the beginning of the parade, which is everybody who wants to make this a political march. Is joining that contingent.
Me too.
As opposed to the corporate floats.
We'll be up there.
Farther back.
I hope there are so many people we don't even run into each other.
And in this season of Pride, the National Park Service has announced they're going to be collecting oral histories of Stonewall veterans. You can call them and make an appointment to give them your oral history. They're doing it out of the LGBT Community Center here. So call the Community Center at 212-620-7310. I should have put that up, but it's the LGBT Center.
This was a $1 million grant from Google, and it's all leading up to the 50th anniversary of Pride, of the uprising, rather, in 2019 in June. And that is going to be in New York. World Pride is going to be in New York that year.
Also involved in this is the Lower East Side Tenement Museum, which is now being run by Kevin Jennings, who created GLSEN and worked in the Obama administration education
been to the
department.
Tenement Museum.
The
Have you?
Arcus, no, I haven't, but Kevin Jennings is now running it.
It's very claustrophobic.
Well, they want to make it bigger.
Well, don't make the rooms bigger. It would not be authentic.
Let's see what else I got here. Houston, let's see, are we up to that? No, Knoxville. Knoxville had a Pride celebration, and there were some of those,
wacky anti-religious people.
Yes.
Anti-gay people.
So the Gay Men's Chorus in Knoxville made a nice little circle around them and sang to the anti-gay protesters. They also sang "We Shall Overcome," but it was just a nice, peaceful and powerful moment.
It was.
Yes, so thank you for that. That was Knoxville.
And everybody's getting into the act with crosswalks, aren't they?
Yes. Should we do crosswalks?
I think so.
Okay. Houston. Houston did a rainbow crosswalk in the Montrose LGBT section of town.
How do anti-gay people get across the street when they put these things up?
I think these should be everywhere.
Yes.
Every crosswalk. And that is a box display kind of thing at one of the corners. This was all done in honor of a 21-year-old named Alex Hill, who was killed by a hit-and-run driver in January of 2016. So sorry for the loss of Alex, and congratulations to Houston for doing that. Atlanta at 10th and Piedmont, also in an LGBT section of town, is doing the same crosswalk.
Well, the thing is, they're making it permanent. And it was a controversy because they put these things up temporarily, and then there was an objection that this is bad for traffic and you can't keep it this way. Mm-hmm. And then they resolved that. And
too distracting.
They got 20,000 people on a petition, and then you could do anything. Which is how we're going to get Gilbert's flag up at the end of Christopher Street.
I hope so. And we heard from a viewer in Billings, Montana, and my old high school roommate, two Billings residents, about a Pride celebration there.
Well, they made it a family day, and they had 2,000 people, and another...
And this was stunning because 3 years ago they defeated a non-discrimination ordinance in Billings, led, by the way, by Gian Forte, the new congressman there, the guy who beat up the reporter.
From Guardian.
He was one of the leaders of the anti-LGBT contingent, but Billings pulled off a very good Pride celebration. In Columbus, Ohio, they had a confrontation. We talked to you last week about the D.C. Pride and how some protesters were there objecting on racial issues.
They're objecting to the corporatization of bad corporations and to police presence.
Yes, and to the non-diverse organizing of the Pride Parade. Well, some Black Lives Matter protesters showed up in Columbus, Ohio. They were talking peacefully to the Pride marchers who were happily engaged in conversation with them. They just wanted a pause in the parade, but and it was a lot about the acquittal in Minnesota of the cop who murdered Philandro Castile, which is, more tape came out on that this week.
Horrible.
Shocking, horrible. But the Columbus police just decided on their own to intervene and arrested 4 of these protesters and hauled them off to jail quite violently, and it was not a good thing. Yeah.
Ugly, but less ugly, or although, you could debate this. There was a girl, a 12-year-old Mormon girl, who was speaking at services at her, I guess, her temple or wherever she worships, and she was talking about, that she happens to be gay and that God made her this way. And eventually, she was asked to sit down by the elders, but they didn't actually chastise her that much.
Well, they didn't need to. They just said,
well, I'm just
sit
saying
out.
they didn't
Shut
say
up.
we don't abide by this. They said we welcome everybody. I'm just saying it wasn't as ugly as it could have been.
Well, yeah, there's tape of it on YouTube if you want to look into that.
We'll put it in our email so you can watch it. And then congratulations to Savannah, Georgia. They're going to open up an LGBTQ center that'll offer HIV testing and be a resource for LGBTQ youth.
And congratulations to Judge Paul Fineman in New York. He has been nominated to the Court of Appeals, New York State's highest court, the first out gay member of the Court of Appeals. Governor Cuomo has nominated him.
I have known him forever.
The legislature is about to end, so we suspect he will not be confirmed till they.
Yeah, at first they were saying, I don't know, the Republicans who run it. They're in the minority, but they run the Senate. Long story. But they said that we don't have time for this. And now they're saying, well, he's a good guy, we'll see. So we'll... New York.
So maybe they'll do it right now, or maybe they won't.
New York.
The state that doesn't work. Well, another state that's having trouble is Texas, where the Governor Abbott, has gone ahead and signed the bill that gives all child care agencies the religious freedom to not serve LGBT kids,
It allows
the kids
foster
of
parents
LGBT families.
allows foster parents to expose children in their care to potentially dangerous practices like conversion therapy. It is heinous.
Yeah, really bad.
Horrible.
Yep.
All right. Well, how about the better news from Oregon?
Yes.
Oregon is going to become the first state to offer a gender-neutral marker on its state-issued driver's license and ID cards on July 1st. And so you get to put an X if you like, and you don't want to check male or female, and provides an option for non-binary people. And then the District of Columbia is doing the same thing.
And California has a bill to follow shortly thereafter, so this may be a new thing.
Yes.
All right.
In New York, a family court judge took co-parenting rights a step further in what's called a filiation case. This is an amplification of previous rulings about, lesbians or gay men who had broken up, and they ordered an order of filiation for this mother who had been shut out of this kid's life.
Those are complicated cases, but
They
people
are very
do need to be recognized.
It's building on the decision of the judge who committed suicide, and Paul Feynman is replacing.
Yeah. Well, in other legal news, there was the Supreme Court decision on a couple of decisions.
Yep.
One on the free speech for trademarks. An Asian band, pop group, wanted to call itself the Slants and tried to trademark that name, and were told that was too derogatory and they couldn't do it, and they were rejected.
We remember when gay was offensive.
Well, and I'm getting to that because, in fact, this does directly affect us. Dykes on Bikes, a long-standing motorcycle group, has applied repeatedly for trademark for that name and has been rejected repeatedly by the Patent and Trademark Office on the grounds that dyke is a derogatory word, which it is not in the proper context. And now and they submitted an amicus brief in this case, and now that this case has been won for free speech, we are hopeful that they can finally get the trademark they deserve.
And also in terms of free speech, the Supreme Court ruled that people on the sex offender registry can use Facebook. Not for nefarious purposes, but to, like, say, we took a trip to the mountains or something.
Yeah.
That's okay, and that's a step forward because we've although there is a need for protecting us against predators, obviously this thing has gone too far.
I was sorry to hear this week about the death of Jim Graham at 71 of a C. diff infection. He was the longtime executive director of the Whitman Walker Clinic in D.C., which was
he really started everything there around AIDS, pretty much.
He really did, and carried on for 15 years doing that, and then decided that to be really effective, he needed to run for office.
Which he did.
He ran for the city council and served there for another 15 or 16 years. He got them to pass the Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Law for the District of Columbia. He had originally clerked for Chief Justice Earl Warren.
Wow.
Yeah. Long time
we
ago.
were growing up, there were big signs that said "Impeach Earl Warren" from the John Birch Society.
Yep. Well, Jim Graham got a lot done.
A couple of murders to tell you about. Kendra Adams, a trans woman, was murdered in Ithaca, New York, and police have charged Michael Davis, 45, with that crime.
Her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Burned, murdered.
And
Kendra was the co-founder of the House of Merlot and a very popular local performer.
And a 57-year-old Manhattan investment firm CEO, Neil Rodney Smith, was found dead, naked on his bed in Brooklyn this past week. It was basically one of those scam crimes. He picked up somebody through an app. A heterosexual couple actually showed up. The woman stayed outside. The guy goes in, and kills him and robs him, and he's gone.
In L.A., a sanitation worker won a big judgment, $17.4 million. He had been perceived as gay at work, harassed by his supervisors, not his fellow employees, but his supervisors, who abused him, bullied him. He is still suffering physical and emotional damage. He's on permanent disability. He was really tortured, this guy at work, and he's not gay. He was just perceived as gay.
That's all it takes.
And they just went after him. So he's gotten a big settlement. They, of course, will appeal. We'll see what stands up as the award to him, but terrible.
New York City is proposing a bill to ban conversion therapy. Now, the governor's already banned it through executive order in the state, but they want to codify this, and they want to ban it for everybody, not just for minors who are seeking help.
I see. And good news this week, a huge, long, fascinating interview by Outsports. I would recommend you go to outsports.com to read the interview with Ryan O'Callaghan. Ryan was a tackle for both the New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs, and he comes out in this interview.
He says, take a look at him. He said, the stereotype of gay men was chiseled features and six-packs, so I let myself go, becoming a sloppy straight guy, chewing tobacco, so that to throw people off the scent. He said, being gay wasn't just a small detail in my life, it consumed it. It's all I would think about, but now that I've come out, it rarely crosses my mind.
He talks very movingly about how he had a whole plan for his life when he realized he was gay.
And his death.
He was going to have a football career, and then he was going to kill himself. And he finally, he became addicted to pills and drugs, and someone finally said, "You have got to go to counseling." And in counseling, he found a sympathetic, experienced counselor who walked him through the process of coming out. It's an amazing story.
By the way, I want to alert you to a scam that's taking place in Iowa. I know this was a heterosexual case, but I'm sure there are gay victims as well. They engage you, and then they send you a picture, and then they say you've been sent you possess child pornography, and you've got to pay. And the authorities are simply asking, come forward, and you're being extorted, and we will help you.
All right, international news.
Well, the big story was out of Russia. That anti-gay propaganda law that we've told you about over the years was ruled illegal by the European Court for Human Rights. And they ordered Russia to pay the men who were suing at 43,000 euros in damages. 3
guys sued who had been arrested, one for standing outside a school with a sign saying, I'm gay and that's okay. One was Nikolai Alexeyev, who's been the big demonstrator for years in Russia, and the court said this violates free speech. There should not be any discrimination laws that cover sexual orientation.
The story says
that forbid it.
They signed on to this treaty in 1953, and the ruling is binding, but as with much in international law enforcement, it is a matter of norms.
Russia has basically said they will ignore this ruling.
Well, I mean,
the ruling was...
Putin claims it's his duty to stop marriage equality.
Yeah, the only judge who voted against this was the Russian judge on the court, who said, this is ridiculous. We can certainly have our laws. Bad.
And in what's left of the Ukraine, in Kiev, thousands of gay rights activists had a pride rally, 2,500 people. They had to be protected by 5,500 police, but they managed to get it done.
Yes, in other violent protesters. 1,000 people showed up in Lisbon, Portugal for a pride parade.
Let's not overlook the 3 million who showed up in Sao Paulo.
Yes, Brazil.
And the parade focused on secularism and the idea that no religion is law, regardless of people's beliefs. How about that?
Very, very good.
I think if we had that, some of the politicians wouldn't even march in our parade.
In Malaysia, terrible story. An 18-year-old boy was beaten, raped, burned, and is now brain dead, beaten by a gang of youths, 2 of whom knew him,
16 to 18.
Saw him, called their friends to come join them, and they did all this to him.
They admitted to being involved.
Yeah. Terrible story.
Just awful story.
And the International Soccer Organization, FIFA, is on a campaign to stop anti-gay slurs at the World Cup. They have fined and criticized various countries over the years for this. They're now telling referees that if it gets too bad, they should stop the games, they should warn the fans. They should empty the stadiums is basically what they should do if the fans cannot stop being so violently harassing.
And in Serbia, the president has nominated a 41-year-old businesswoman of the year to be the prime minister. Now, this hasn't all been worked out. It's a very conservative country. I don't think she's that liberal herself.
Well, she's not. Anna Brnabic. She is currently the Minister of Public Administration and Local Government.
I mean, it's a breakthrough. There's no question.
It is. It was a breakthrough when she was appointed to that position. They have no partner rights in Serbia.
It's a very autocratic country, like this one.
But they're trying to ingratiate themselves with the European Union for membership. But members of parliament are not sold on this, and even though the president has nominated her, they have had to postpone the vote on confirming her as prime minister, and she may or may not get confirmed.
And they didn't confirm a gay partnership bill in Lithuania. 29 for, 59 against, 20 abstentions.
But public
they said
support.
it's progress. The Lithuanian Gay League says that's progress because they got support from each of the parties. Parties.
And in Switzerland, they've delayed a parliamentary vote on marriage, same-sex marriage, for a couple of years. But the LGBT Pink Cross group, the activist group, is not unhappy about this. They say they need more time to get the details straightened out, and they do have registered partnerships.
That's why they have all those clocks. They need a lot of time to do things in Switzerland. Women didn't get the right to vote until 1971. And there was one canton that didn't let them vote until 1991 in local elections.
And when did we legalize sodomy?
I'm part of the, I talk about the problems in our country.
Exactly.
But we did let women vote in 1920.
Well, that wasn't too early either.
No.
In Canada, the Parliament has added gender identity and expression non-discrimination to the Human Rights Act and the hate crimes law that covers the entire country. And they got royal assent from Queen Elizabeth for that, so it's a done deal. And in the Yukon part of Canada, they have passed a law that simplifying gender change rules, so that's good. And they celebrated that by doing a crosswalk of the trans flag. They're ahead of Houston and Atlanta. Look, they've got the trans flag on a crosswalk there.
It looks a lot like the Russian flag, but anyway.
No, it does not.
I know. But the rainbow flag was raised by the Prime Minister for the first time on Parliament Hill, and he's getting ready to apologize for all the arrests and persecutions of LGBT people over the years.
Watch out for Turkey next week. The far right is threatening to disrupt this Sunday, actually, the Pride event there. It was peaceful for many years, but in the last couple of years, they've been attacked by the cops and had the Pride celebration banned.
If the state allows it, we will not.
Yeah, things are getting worse in Turkey.
But I was surprised to see that the nominee to the USAID is pledging support for LGBTQ rights. His name is Mark Green. He's not that horrible Mark Green.
He's not the horrible Mark Green. He's not the good Mark Green. He's a third Mark Green.
I know. It's not that. Yeah. Well, his name is Mark Green. Anyway.
Please, mothers, stop naming your children Mark Green. We have enough.
Okay. The German Greens said they won't enter government without a gay marriage pledge.
Yeah, but the ruling coalition is refusing that. So same-sex marriage is becoming quite the issue in Germany with the elections coming up.
In Britain, the head of the Liberal Democratic Party, Tim Farron, had to resign because he's a big right-wing Christian and he has illiberal views on gay sex. And they've got a new leader, which makes them more open to joining with the Conservatives in a coalition if the thing with the right-wingers from Northern Ireland happens.
It's a mess there.
And the Austrian Federal Chancellor, Christian Kern, is going to speak at the Rainbow Parade on June 17th.
All right, another headline flash this week in HIV and AIDS news. Six, count them, 6 members of the U.S. President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS walked away from the council saying Trump does not care about HIV and AIDS.
We're out of here.
He has no strategy. He seeks no input. He is harming people with HIV and AIDS with his legislative policies.
And these people understand that they can do more good now from the outside screaming about it.
He took down the Office of National AIDS Policy from the White House website. He's appointed no new leader to that office. And he's cut Medicaid, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, the National Institutes of Health, any PrEP funding, and Planned Parenthood.
And the one thing I want to say about this horrible bill that's coming out of the Senate this week is if you want to preserve health care in this country, you've got to work in your state to get them to do things. California is doing this. New York is trying to, but our assembly does it. The Senate hasn't done it. But that's where the action is.
It's going to have to be.
Right.
Because there's not going to be anything from the federal government. I'm not convinced they're going to get a Senate vote, although the way they twist arms, they may.
And if we have to raise the money ourselves, we will. Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS had a strip show, which they've been doing for years, and they've raised $1.6 million in 2 performances for a very entertaining strip show, which I didn't make this year, but...
They do such great work. They've done it for so many years, and they take care of so many people.
No, and not just on HIV/AIDS, but many other health issues, women's health, et cetera.
Yeah. And congratulations to NYU Medical Center, which is training medical students on trans issues by using actual trans actors instead of non-trans people playing trans people.
I know a lot of actors who get some of the only work they get is playing patients.
Yeah, well, now they're using actual trans people to play trans patients.
Okay.
All right, entertainment news.
Well, Stephen Sondheim's Assassins is being revived at the New York City Center Encores July 12th through 15th. They have a whole series of these Encores things that are short. This one's going to feature Julie White as Sarah Jane Moore. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to nycitycenter.org for all the Encores Off-Center series. They're short runs.
Have you seen any of the I Am Jazz TV series?
I have not.
Well, they're about to start season 3 on the Learning Channel, TLC, next week. They're going to have a double premiere on the 27th and 28th. And it's really quite captivating because Jazz Jennings has become quite the icon. And because she's one of these people who, as a child, started taking hormone blockers so that before puberty, so that she could, not develop with male hormones. And she's very charming and very smart and very open about her life. So it really takes you through the pros and cons of what happens to her, and her family is very supportive, but has its own issues. And the book she wrote, there was a day of people all over the country recently reading the I Am Jazz book, I think, to great effect. So she's had a real impact, and I would say a much more thoughtful, positive impact than Caitlyn Jenner.
Yes. The young people will lead us. Now all you have to do is vote. Because, vote.
I Am Jazz Season 3, TLC next week on the 27th and 28th.
I did watch an episode of Gaycation with Ellen Page, right?
Yes.
And they were in
I've lost track of
They
that.
were in Japan.
Yeah. Well, that was an old one, right?
Well, that's what I saw.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, they bring in this Japanese mother with her gay son, who tells her that she tells her, on camera.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little dicey, but it worked out okay in the end, and the mother was very happy to see that her son had all these friends, including these ones who don't speak Japanese from America.
I'm starting to have fights with people over Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I know. I ran into some people at the Gilbert thing who liked it.
It's atrocious. It's atrocious. I have no hesitation about saying that. But people say to me, "But isn't there lesbian content in this?" There is more lesbian content in my new favorite show, Claws.
Claws?
Claws. C-L-A-W-S.
Oh.
Claws. Which is a scripted show about a nail salon in Central Florida run by Niecy Nash. Do you know who she is?
I don't, of course.
She's a wonderful, sassy actress. And her little gang of ne'er-do-well salon workers. The episode 2 last week ended with a hip-hop stripper pole funeral for a mob figure that then was interrupted by the chief mob guy breaking into "How Great Thou Art."
Don't they know the country's falling apart?
But here's the deal. One of the salon people is this extremely butch lesbian who is extremely flirtatious with all the female customers. And she is
How does that go over?
She is a hot ticket. Everybody loves it. There's more lesbian content in Claws than there is in Wonder Woman. I recommend Claws on TNT. She's sort of the bodyguard for the salon.
Performances this summer are going to take place of a new musical based on the short film Trevor, about a chubby gay boy who makes a failed attempt at suicide, a comedy. And it's scheduled for August 9th through September 17th down at the John D. Nichols Theater in this is in Glencoe, Illinois. But I assume it'll make it here eventually.
Well, and that's all the basis for the Trevor Project.
Yes, of course.
And there was a movie about that. So this is a new play.
Well, it started out as a movie, yes. Yeah. And then Henry David Hwang's transgender drama, M. Butterfly, is coming back to Broadway in October at the Court Theater.
And the movie about Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs, The Battle of the Sexes, is coming up this fall too.
And
there is a new series. Well, it's a continuation of a series, an Australian series on Acorn TV that is starting. Series 3, Janet King, Series 3, Playing Advantage. This Curve magazine has called her the queen of the TV lesbians. She's a prosecutor. I saw a trailer. She's quite attractive. She's blonde and lovely and strong, and Janet King, if you get Acorn TV, check out Janet King Series 3.
And speaking of strong, I'm sorry I don't have a picture this week for this, but next week, on July 11th at Dixon Place, the show we saw, the sold-out show Bandwidth, The Ups and Downs of a Lesbian Diva by Eileen Samuth and Barbara Rabb, is going to be revived for one day as part of their Hot Festival.
Yeah.
And it's if you want to learn more about that, go to dixonplace.org. Dixonplace.org.
Yeah, we'll tell you more about that.
We'll put it in the email.
Week.
We'll tell you more about it next week. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any assessment of the Ossoff Handel race?
Well, I mean, most people were. I kind of resented the headlines, horrible Democratic defeat. Horrible Democratic defeat. This was a district that was won by Tom Price, as you say, 6 months ago by 23 points. It was Newt Gingrich's old district. It has been a Republican district for 30 years. And John Ossoff comes within 4 points. In all of these districts, we're looking to replace hardcore Republicans in hardcore Republican districts, and we are coming close. I realize close, almost only counts in horseshoes. But if I were
grenades, as they say.
If I were a Republican member of Congress and I saw that 20 points were lost in the district, I'd be very nervous if I lived in a much closer district. There are 22 districts Republican districts that Hillary Clinton won in the election.
23, I think.
Yeah, 23.
Well, I think we did it to ourselves with those headlines. I think we amped up the temperature on that so much and got so excited about it and put so much money into it and made it so make or break that when he lost...
Well, it looked very possible when he got 48% of the vote in the first round and she got 20%.
Yeah.
We figured there certainly was a chance there.
But then in the
and
runoff,
she's a horror show.
He got 48% again and she got 52%.
Yes.
So there you are. So I certainly don't think it's over. We had a long way to go and a lot of races to win in 2018 and very winnable races.
Mark it on your calendars every time it comes up, every primary, especially these off-year elections when we don't vote.
All right, let's move to our closing piece.
We had a wonderful time at this.
Well, yes and no.
I did.
Well, I was sad, but
sure, I was sad. It was a good sad.
But I felt, I wanted Gilbert to be there.
Yes.
So last week at Sheridan Square, outside the Stonewall Inn, a memorial rally and then march in honor of Gilbert Baker, our friend and the inventor of the rainbow flag. They'd done one in San Francisco the week before. A lot of speakers. We lead off with Cleve Jones and then Justin Sams, who played Sylvester in When We Rise, and Ken Kidd of Rise and Resist and Gays Against Guns, and then Gilbert's niece. So we wanted you to get a little flavor of the ceremony.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Much love to Gilbert's family. It was so good to have dinner with you last night. I'm so grateful that you're here. I wish we could have had you with us in San Francisco at the Castro Theater when we remembered Gilbert last week, but it's so very good to have you here. I don't remember when I first met Gilbert, which leads me to believe that there was probably a lot of LSD involved. But we were best friends for over 40 years. He gave me the wonderful gift of allowing me to help him dye the fabric of the very first 2 flags that flew almost 40 years ago in San Francisco's United Nations Plaza. One of the things that Gilbert and I had in common is that we knew we both owed our lives to the movement. And that is not hyperbole, that is not rhetoric. We both have had to deal with the realities of oppression. Gilbert suffered with depression through much of his life. The movement gave him purpose, and he gave back to the movement the symbol that saved his life, and that symbol now has saved millions more. Gilbert was never after money. He wanted to serve his people. He knew that the connection he had with LGBT people was what gave his life meaning and purpose. Now, since his first creation, there's been many stories and revisions and all sorts of symbolism added on, but I'll tell you what, I asked Gilbert, "Girl, where'd you get that idea?" And he said, "Oh, please, I got it from the sky, I got it from the sky. Long live Gilbert Baker."
So while I worried that pink was going to be too girly, Gilbert put pink in the flag to symbolize sex. And here's what he wrote about the flag and the idea he made when he made the first rainbow flags. June 26, 1978, Lesbian and Gay Freedom Day. We didn't sleep the night before we finished the final stitches of the 2 huge flags as the dawn broke and sunlight steamed into the top floor of the Gay Community Center. We weren't tired. We celebrated by taking off our clothes and rolling around the soft cotton, infusing the fabric with the joy of sex. The most logical way to launch a flag for the lesbian and gay liberation movement. It was really all about sex. A spectrum of sexuality and the freedom to express it, that we consider a human right. So today, let's celebrate Gilbert and feeling comfortable in our bodies and looking sexy as ever. God bless. We love you, Gilbert.
Now, indigo represents serenity in Gilbert's rainbow. My friendship with Gilbert grew from our shared experiences demonstrating against bigotry, homophobia, and inequality. Together, we yelled, marched down endless avenues, picketed embassies, dumped Russian vodka, wore skin-tight short shorts and sequins, pointed fingers of shame, and rang cowbells and tambourines as loudly as we possibly could. Together, with trusted comrades, we made slow but steady change. Show up. If you see something, don't just say something, do something. Do not take shit. Raise hell to make change and treasure the comrades who do it with you. Be fabulous. And when you feel the encroaching grip of fascism, resist. Resist, rise, and resist. You are a part of history. And whether you do nothing, whether you do something half-assed, or whether you give your best toward making the change that you'd like to see, that will be your legacy. Gilbert Baker did nothing half-assed, and that, my friends, is why he was able to gain serenity in knowing that he had absolutely done his best to be his true self and to make things better than they were when he got here. You need to do what you can to resist this dangerous, bigoted, maniacal Trump regime. Dig deep. Pull strength from one another. Pull strength from something bigger. Pull strength from Gilbert's rainbow. Yes. Resist. Be sure you've done your best. Indigo. Serenity.
I am a high school teacher in Austin, Texas, and every day I see the impact that Uncle Gilbert's flag has made. I see kids with rainbow shirts and backpacks, binders, or patches. On every classroom door, there's a rainbow sticker that says Ally. The students might not know who created the flag, but they do know that it means love and acceptance. I'd like us all to hear one more time the words Gilbert said after he created the flag in 1978. He said, "I knew this is the most beautiful thing I'll ever do. This is the most important thing I'll ever make." Uncle Gilbert gave our family and the whole world so much love. He did so much more than his fair share of making this world a better place. We love him and miss him. Sorry. Thank you all for being here tonight.
To conclude our program, that's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, if birds fly and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where